Good morning. Today we are going to discuss about the bony pelvis. So pelvis is derived from a Latin word which means basin. So pelvis means basin. What are the bones constituting the bony pelvis? We have the two hip bones, the sacrum and the coccyx. The two hip bones are articulating anteriorly to form the pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis is an example for secondary cartilaginous joint. And the two hip bones are going to articulate posteriorly with the sacrum to form the sacroiliac joint. So sacroiliac joint is a plain synovial joint, and the sacrum is going to articulate with the coccyx to form the sacrococcygeal joint. Coming to the functions of the bony pelvis, the bony pelvis helps in transmission of the weight from the vertebral column to the lower limbs. So in the standing position, the weight is transmitted from the vertebral column through the sacroiliac joint and then through the hip joint. In the sitting position, the weight is transmitted from the vertebral column through the sacroiliac joint and then through the ischial tuberosities into the seat. So that is the weight transmission. Then this is the pelvic cavity. Within the pelvic cavity, we have the pelvic organs. So in males, there is urinary bladder anteriorly and rectum posteriorly, and in females, there is urinary bladder, uterus and rectum from anterior to posterior. So these pelvic organs are protected by the bony pelvis. Then the bony pelvis provides attachment for various muscles of the vertebral column and of the lower limb. In females, the pelvic cavity acts as a canal for the birth of the fetus. So it provides room for accommodation of the fetal head and helps in the parturition. The study of the various measurements of the pelvis is called pelvimetry, and this is very important in various fields, in the obstetrics and gynecology, in radiology, and it also has forensic and anthropological importance. So we need to study measurements of the pelvic cavity. So before going into the pelvimetry, we need to learn how to hold the bony pelvis in anatomical position. So for that, the anterior superior iliac spine, so this is the anterior superior iliac spine, and the pubic symphysis, the upper margin of pubic symphysis, they should be in the same coronal plane. So when we hold it, the anterior superior iliac spine and the pubic symphysis should be in the same coronal plane. We can hold it against a wall such that the anterior superior iliac spine and the pubic symphysis are held up against the wall in the same coronal plane. So this is how it is held in anatomical position. This is the pelvic inlet. So this is called the pelvic inlet or the pelvic brim, and this pelvic inlet divides the pelvis into a greater pelvis. So this is the greater pelvis or the false pelvis, and below you have the lesser pelvis or the true pelvis. It is called true pelvis because the pelvic organs are within this cavity. So this is the true pelvis. So coming to the greater pelvis or the false pelvis is part of the abdominal cavity. So the pelvic brim separates the abdominal cavity from the pelvic cavity. Another thing we have to notice, there are few muscles which are arranged in a hammock-like manner over here, and that is called the pelvic diaphragm. We will be learning it in detail later. So the pelvic diaphragm separates the pelvic cavity from the perineum below. So perineum is below, again we will be learning about it in detail. So we have the abdominal cavity separated from the pelvic cavity by the pelvic brim, and the perineum is separated from the pelvic cavity by the pelvic diaphragm, a group of muscles. Okay, so coming back to the greater pelvis or the false pelvis, there are two important diameters for the greater pelvis. That is the interspinous diameter, that is the distance between the two anterior superior iliac spine. That is called interspinous diameter, and it measures about 25 centimeters. So the interspinous diameter is 25 centimeters. Then there is another diameter that is between the tubercle of the iliac crest of both the sides. So this is the tubercle of the iliac crest. So if you measure the distance between the tubercles of the iliac crest of both the sides, it is slightly more than the interspinous diameter, and it is called intercristal diameter. The intercristal diameter is 26 to 27.5 centimeters. So these are the diameters for the greater pelvis, the interspinous diameter and the intercristal diameter. Okay, then coming to the pelvic cavity. So we have to learn the measurements at three levels. One is at the level of pelvic inlet, Then one is at the level of the pelvic cavity and one is at the level of pelvic outlet. We are going to learn three measurements. There is the anteroposterior diameter, the oblique diameter and the transverse diameter in all the three levels. And these measurements are different for males and females, and the female measurements are more important because it is required for the birth of the fetus. Coming to the pelvic inlet, before we move on to the measurements, we need to learn what are the bones forming the boundaries of the pelvic inlet. So we have, this is the sacral promontory. The upper margin of the body of the first sacral segment is called the sacral promontory. Then we have the anterior margin of the ala of sacrum. Then we have the arcuate line of ilium. Then we have the iliopubic eminence, the pecten pubis, the pubic crest and the upper margin of pubic symphysis. Again, we have the sacral promontory, the anterior margin of ala of sacrum, the arcuate line of ilium, the iliopubic eminence, the pecten pubis, pubic crest and the pubic symphysis. So this of both the sides is going to form the boundaries of the pelvic inlet. The arcuate line of ilium, the iliopubic eminence, the pecten pubis and the pubic crest together form the linea terminalis. They together called the linea terminalis. Boundaries of the pelvic inlet includes the sacral promontory, the margin of ala, the arcuate line of ilium, the pecten pubis, the pubic crest and the pubic symphysis. Of this, the arcuate line, the pecten pubis and the pubic crest together form the linea terminalis. So this is called the linea terminalis. So these form the boundaries of the pelvic inlet, which separates the greater pelvis or the false pelvis from the true pelvis or the lesser pelvis. When we hold the pelvis in an anatomical position, the plane of the pelvic inlet is directed downwards and forwards, and it is making an angle of 50 to 60 degree with the horizontal. So it can be explained with a diagram. The plane of the pelvic inlet is directed downwards and forwards, and it is making an angle of 50 to 60 degree with the horizontal. And if you draw a line perpendicular to this plane, and through the center of this plane we get the axis of pelvic inlet. This axis of pelvic inlet, if we trace it forwards, it will coincide with the umbilicus, and when we trace it backwards, it is going to coincide with the coccyx. So that is the axis of pelvic inlet, and it is corresponding to the long axis of the uterus. Coming to the measurements of the pelvic inlet. So we are going to learn the anteroposterior diameter, the oblique diameter and the transverse diameter. The anteroposterior diameter is the measurement from the upper margin of the pubic symphysis to the middle of the sacral promontory. So that is the anteroposterior diameter. It measures about 10 centimeters in males and 11 centimeters in females. So it is more in females, it is 11 centimeters in females and 10 centimeters in males. Coming to the oblique diameter, the oblique diameter is measured from the sacroiliac joint to the iliopubic eminence. So you have the iliopubic eminence. From the sacroiliac joint to the iliopubic eminence, you have the oblique diameter, and it measures about 11 centimeters in males and 12 centimeters in females. Then the transverse diameter of the pelvic inlet measures about 12.5 centimeters in males and 13 centimeters in females. So if you look at the measurements in the females, the anteroposterior diameter measures about 11 centimeters, the oblique diameter is 12 centimeters and the transverse diameter is 13 centimeters. So the transverse diameter is the longest of the three diameters at the level of pelvic inlet. Okay. Then in female, three more anteroposterior diameters. So we have already learned the anteroposterior diameter from the upper margin of pubic symphysis to the sacral promontory. That is the anteroposterior diameter, or it is also called anatomical conjugate. It is anatomical conjugate because it can be measured only radiologically, that is after taking an X-ray. So that is the anatomical conjugate. Other than that, there is obstructive conjugate, diagonal conjugate and external conjugate. So coming to obstructive conjugate is measured from the inner aspect of the pubic symphysis. So from the middle of the inner aspect of pubic symphysis to the middle of sacral promontory is going to be the obstructive conjugate. It is going to be less than the anatomical conjugate, and it is clinically very important. It is this diameter the fetal head has to traverse while moving through the birth canal. So obstructive conjugate, the normal value is 10.5 centimeters And if the obstructive conjugate is less than 10 centimeters, it will be difficult for the fetal head to pass through. It can cause obstructive labor. So that is about the obstructive conjugate from the middle of the inner aspect of pubic symphysis to the middle of the sacral promontory. That is obstructive conjugate. Coming to the diagonal conjugate. Diagonal conjugate is measured from the lower margin of the pubic symphysis to the middle of the sacral promontory. And diagonal conjugate is easily measured with the help of a per vaginal examination. So we can do a per vaginal examination of the female, and we will be able to measure the diagonal conjugate, that is from the lower border of pubic symphysis to the sacral promontory. And diagonal conjugate is about 12 centimeters. The obstructive conjugate can be obtained from the diagonal conjugate by subtracting 1.5 centimeters. So the same I'll explain in a diagram. Then we have one more conjugate, that is the external conjugate, that is from the external surface of pubic symphysis to the spine of the fifth lumbar vertebra. That is the external conjugate. It measures about 19 centimeters. It is not very important. If you subtract 9 centimeters from the external conjugate, we can obtain the anatomical conjugate. So there are three anteroposterior diameters of the inlet in female. The anatomical conjugate, it is measured from the upper margin of pubic symphysis till the middle of sacral promontory, and that is about 11 centimeters. The obstetric conjugate is measured from the middle of the inner surface of pubic symphysis till the middle of sacral promontory, and that is clinically important because the baby's head has to traverse the obstructive conjugate to enter into the pelvic cavity, and the obstructive conjugate can be obtained from the diagonal conjugate. The diagonal conjugate is measured from the lower end of pubic symphysis to the middle of sacral promontory by per vaginal examination, and that is about 12 centimeters. The obstetric conjugate can be obtained from the diagonal conjugate by subtracting 1.5 centimeters from the diagonal conjugate. So that gives you the obstructive conjugate. So it is around 10.5 centimeters. The obstructive conjugate is around 10.5 centimeters. So the diagonal conjugate minus 1.5 centimeters gives us the obstructive conjugate. So diagonal conjugate we can measure by doing the per vaginal examination, doing the PV, and obstructive conjugate can be obtained by subtracting 1.5 centimeters from the diagonal conjugate. So now look at the shape of the pelvic inlet. This is a female pelvis. In females it is little wide. The pelvic inlet has to be wide so that the fetal head can pass through the pelvic inlet. So this is the shape of a gynecoid pelvis. And this is a male pelvis. You can see the pelvic inlet is little more narrower, and it is shaped like a heart, that is heart of playing cards. This is called android pelvis. So based on the shape of the inlet, in males we get android pelvis, that is the sacral promontory is pushed forwards and it is more narrower compared to the inlet of the female pelvis. Based on the shape of the inlet of the female pelvis, there is different types of pelvis which can be explained with the diagram. Based on the shape of the pelvic inlet, there are 4 types of pelvis in females. That is android pelvis, the gynecoid pelvis, the anthropoid pelvis, and platypelvic pelvis. Android pelvis, it is in such a way that the transverse diameter in the posterior segment is wide. So if you consider this is the anterior segment, this is the posterior segment. The transverse diameter in the anterior segment is not wide, whereas in the posterior segment it is wide. And the sacral promontory is projecting forwards so that it gives a heart shape. The inlet is shaped like a heart of playing cards. This type of pelvis is usually seen in males, but it can also be seen in certain females. The fetal head can get obstructed as it passes through the birth canal. So there can be obstructed labor when the female has android pelvis. About 50% of the females have gynecoid pelvis. In gynecoid pelvis, it is transversely oval. The transverse diameter is more than the anteroposterior diameter, and the anterior segment and the posterior segment are equally wide. So this is the pelvis that is most favorable for labor. Anthropoid pelvis. Anthropoid pelvis, the anteroposterior diameter is more than the transverse diameter. It is sagittally oval. Okay, and it is seen in newborns of both sexes, the anthropoid pelvis. And if all the segments of the bony pelvis grow in a proportional manner, certain adult females can also have anthropoid pelvis. In certain races, anthropoid pelvis is seen, which is not favorable for labor. Another type of pelvis is a flat pelvis or the platypelvic pelvis, where the transverse diameter is disproportionately greater than that of the anteroposterior diameter, and this pelvis is also not suitable for labor. It can cause obstructive labor. Cephalopelvic disproportion. Coming to the pelvic cavity, the pelvic cavity is longer in the posterior aspect and shorter in the anterior aspect. The bones forming the walls of the pelvic cavity are the pelvic surface of the sacrum and coccyx posteriorly. Laterally, we have the pelvic surface of ilium and ischium, and anteriorly, we have the pelvic surface of the two pubic rami and the inner surface of pubic symphysis. So these are forming the walls of the pelvic cavity. The pelvic cavity is different in males and females. It can be explained with a diagram. In males, the pelvic cavity is longer and it is narrower, whereas in females it is shorter and it is wider or almost cylindrical. In males it is almost conical, in females it is almost cylindrical. The male pelvis can be said to be a larger section of a small cone, whereas in females the pelvic cavity can be said to be a smaller section of a large cone. So in males it is narrower and longer and it is conical, whereas in females it is shorter, wider and cylindrical, so that it can provide space for the descent of the fetus. Another thing you can notice, the inlet in males much bigger as compared to the outlet. So the diameters of the inlet will be much greater than that of the outlet, whereas in females the inlet and outlet have almost similar measurements. So coming to the other differences between the male and female pelvis, this is the subpubic angle. It is wider in females. The angle is about 80 to 90 degree in females. So this is a female pelvis. It is about 80 to 90 degree in females, and in males it is more narrower. So you can see the subpubic angle in males is only about 50 to 60 degree. The subpubic angle, that is the lower margin of pubic symphysis, here there is a ligament that is called arcuate ligament, and this angle between the two lower pubic rami, that is the subpubic angle, and in males it is less. It is about 50 to 60 degrees, whereas in females the pelvis is a little wider. So the subpubic angle is greater. It is about 80 to 90. That is another important difference between male and female pelvis. The other differences between male and female: in males, the ischial spine and the ischial tuberosity are directed inwards, whereas in females it is more outwards. The sacrum in males is almost uniformly curved. It is almost uniformly curved, whereas in female the upper part it is more flat, and then it is having more concavity, an increased concavity in females, so that the fetal head can be accommodated. Also in the females, the sacrum is more wider and the sacrum is more longer in males. And also in females, the coccyx is more movable at the sacrococcygeal joint, so that it can assist in the birth of the fetus. So the coccyx is movable compared to males. Coming to the measurements of the pelvic cavity, we are going to learn about the anteroposterior diameter within the pelvic cavity, the oblique diameter and the transverse diameter. The anteroposterior diameter is from the middle of the inner aspect of the pubic symphysis to the center of the third sacral vertebra. Okay, so that is the anteroposterior diameter, and it is about 12 centimeters in females. Coming to the oblique diameter is from the lower margin of the sacroiliac joint to the middle of the obturator membrane. So this is the obturator foramen, which is closed by obturator membrane. From the lower border of the sacroiliac joint to the middle of obturator membrane, we have the oblique diameter, and the oblique diameter is measuring about 13 centimeters in females. Coming to the transverse diameter is from the pelvic part of the ilium and ischium across the pelvic cavity. So that is the transverse diameter. The transverse diameter is about 12 centimeters in females. So of the three diameters, the oblique diameter is the longest, that is about 13 centimeters in females. Then there are various planes within the pelvic cavity. So you can draw planes at different levels of the pelvic cavity. So there is a plane of greatest pelvic dimension, and there is a plane of least pelvic dimension. The plane of greatest pelvic dimension is at the level of the center of the third sacral vertebra, which we used for the anteroposterior diameter. So that is the plane which is most spacious. So that is the plane of greater pelvic dimension. The plane of least pelvic dimension is at the level of ischial spines. So the transverse diameter between the two ischial spines is the narrowest, and it is about 10 centimeters. So this is the plane of the least pelvic dimension, and of the two planes, the plane of least pelvic dimension is most important, because if the interspinous diameter, if this diameter is less than 10 centimeters, the head will not be able to pass through the birth canal, and it can result in obstructed labor. So the plane of least pelvic dimensions is very important. So that is about the measurements of the pelvic cavity. Now coming to the pelvic outlet. So the pelvic outlet is diamond shape. Here there is a ligament that is from the ischial tuberosity to the sides of the sacrum. There is a ligament that is called the sacrotuberous ligament. The sacrotuberous ligaments converts the pelvic outlet into a diamond shape. The boundaries of the pelvic outlet are the lower margin of pubic symphysis, the ischiopubic ramus, the ischial tuberosity, the sacrotuberous ligament, and the tip of coccyx. So this is the diamond shaped outlet of the pelvis. And if you hold the bone in an anatomical position, if you look at the plane of the pelvic outlet, that is from the tip of coccyx to the lower border of pubic symphysis, that is also directed downwards and forwards. The plane of pelvic outlet is also directed downwards and forwards, and it is making an angle of 10 to 15 degree with the horizontal. If we draw a line perpendicular to this plane and through the center of this plane, we get the axis of the pelvic outlet. And this axis, when we trace it upwards, it coincides with the sacral promontory, and this axis of pelvic outlet is corresponding to the long axis of the vagina. So the axis of pelvic inlet is corresponding to the long axis of uterus, and the axis of pelvic outlet is corresponding to the long axis of vagina. The diameters of the pelvic outlet. The anteroposterior diameter is from the lower border of pubic symphysis to the tip of coccyx. So that measures about 13 centimeters in females and only 8 centimeters in males. So that is the anteroposterior diameter. Coming to the oblique diameter is from the middle of the ischiopubic ramus to the middle of the opposite sacrotuberous ligament. So that is the oblique diameter, and that measures about 12 centimeters in females and 10 centimeters in males. Then we have the transverse diameter. The transverse diameter is seen between the lower margins of the two ischial tuberosity, and it measures about 11 centimeters in females and 8.5 centimeters in males. So of this, the anteroposterior diameter in female is 13 centimeters, the oblique diameter in females is 12 centimeters, and the transverse diameter is 11 centimeters. So of the three diameters, anteroposterior diameter is the longest at the level of pelvic outlet. So that is about the measurements at the level of pelvic outlet. We need to learn the axis of the pelvic cavity. So we can draw multiple planes through the pelvic cavity, and if you are going to draw a line that is joining the center of all these planes, we will get the axis of the pelvic cavity. The axis is directed downwards and forwards with the concavity directed anteriorly, like the concavity of the pelvic part of the sacrum. So that is the axis of the pelvic cavity. It can be explained better with a diagram. So this is the axis of the pelvic cavity. It is in such a way that the concavity is directed anteriorly. It is corresponding to the concavity of the sacrum. We have the concavity of the pelvic cavity. The pelvic cavity faces downwards and backwards till we reach the ischial spine, and after that the axis of the pelvic cavity is directed downwards and forwards. So it is in an inverted J-shaped manner. So the axis of the pelvic cavity corresponds to the long axis of uterus up to the ischial spine, and then it corresponds to long axis of vagina after the ischial spine. So this is the direction in which the fetal head will pass through the birth canal. Okay. So this is the axis of the pelvic cavity, or the axis of the birth canal. To summarize the diameters at the level of pelvic inlet, the cavity and outlet, we have learned the diameters at three levels. There is anteroposterior diameter, oblique diameter, and transverse diameter. Coming to the pelvic inlet, the anteroposterior diameter is 11 centimeters at the level of inlet. The oblique diameter is 12 centimeters, and transverse diameter is 13 centimeters for females. Of this, the largest diameter at the level of inlet is the transverse diameter. Coming to the pelvic cavity, the anteroposterior diameter is 12 centimeters, the oblique diameter is 13 centimeters, and the transverse diameter is 12 centimeters. So the largest diameter at the level of cavity is the oblique diameter, that is 13 centimeters. Coming to the pelvic outlet, the anteroposterior diameter is 13 centimeters. The oblique diameter is 12 centimeters. And the transverse diameter is 11 centimeters. So the largest diameter at the level of outlet is anteroposterior diameter, that is 13 centimeters. Transverse diameter at the level of pelvic inlet is the longest. The oblique diameter at the level of pelvic cavity is the longest, and the anteroposterior diameter at the level of pelvic outlet is the longest. So the fetal head, as it passes through the birth canal, the diameter that engages within the pelvis is called the engaging diameter, and that is the suboccipito-bregmatic diameter. So we have the external occipital protuberance here. So suboccipito-bregmatic diameter. So this is the diameter that engages within the pelvis. First, the suboccipito-bregmatic diameter will engage in the transverse diameter of the pelvic inlet, and then it will pass through the oblique diameter of the pelvic cavity, and then it will pass through the anteroposterior diameter of the pelvic outlet. Fetal head is passing in a spiral manner. So first it occupies the largest diameter, that is the transverse diameter of pelvic inlet, then the oblique diameter of pelvic cavity, and the anteroposterior diameter of the pelvic outlet before it is delivered. So that is, the fetal head has to pass in a spiral manner. So we have learned the various measurements of the pelvis at the level of pelvic inlet, the pelvic cavity, and the pelvic outlet, and we learned the differences in the measurement between males and females. The measurements in females is very important. The three conjugates, that is the anatomical conjugate, the obstetric conjugate, and the diagonal conjugate is very important. How we obtain the obstetric conjugate from the diagonal conjugate, all this we have covered. The obstetric conjugate is clinically important because the fetal head has to traverse through this diameter, and it should not be less than 10 centimeters. If the obstetric conjugate is less than 10 centimeters, there can be obstructed labor. Another important diameter at the level of pelvic cavity is the plane of least pelvic dimension, that is at the level of the ischial spine. If the inner spinous diameter is less than 10 centimeters, again there can be obstructed labor, because biparietal diameter of the fetal head, the transverse diameter of the fetal head is biparietal diameter, that is about 9.5 centimeters at term. So if the inner spinous diameter is less than 10 centimeters, the biparietal diameter cannot pass through the birth canal, so there can be obstructed labor. So at the level of interspinous diameter, that is also important. Another important diameter, that is the intertuberous diameter, that is the transverse diameter of pelvic outlet. If the intertuberous diameter is less than 8 centimeters, there can be obstruction at the level of pelvic outlet. So these diameters are very important. Thank you.